All right, y'all, 8.6, polynomial inequalities. All right, and mainly we're just going to be solving polynomial inequalities and writing the answers in interval notation. So I'm going to give you some steps real quick. So the first thing we need to figure out is when you're writing your interval notation, whether we use parentheses or brackets. So in this situation, if you got less than or greater than, in our interval notation, you're going to use the curvy parentheses. If we have less than or equal or greater than and equal, in the interval notation, you're going to use the square brackets. And that'll be when we're writing the interval notation, like I said. So y'all, the first thing we'll do is write the steps I use to solve the polynomial inequalities, and then we'll work out some of the problems. So steps to solving polynomial inequalities. All right, so the first thing you want to do, you want to actually solve the equation by setting it equal to 0. Now, these are going to be quadratic. So these are going to be like the x squared equations. So remember, to solve them, everything has to be on one side equal to 0. All right, so that should give me 2 solutions. So what I'm going to do using those solutions, I'm going to set up a number line. Using the solutions to set up the intervals. Okay, so my number line, I'm just going to draw a little number line, and I'll have 2 answers. My first answer and my second one. So I'm just going to set up a regular number line here. So once I've set up my number line using the solutions, I'm going to test points to find out where the intervals are true. So I'm going to test points to find out where the intervals are true. So at that point, we'll have 2 situations. I'm just drawing that number line again. The first situation is it'll be true in the middle. So if it's true in the middle, it'll be false on both of the intervals on the ends. All right, y'all, the second case. The second case is it'll be true on the ends and false in the middle. Okay, so you're going to have one of these 2 patterns, true in between the 2 solutions or it's going to be true outside the two solutions, okay? Now, all right, let me let one in real quick. If it's true in the middle, when you're done, your interval solutions will be from A to B. Or if it had the equals in it, it'll be the brackets from A to B. So if it's true in the middle, that's how the intervals will look, one of those two. If it's true on the outsides, then you have to use the union. It'll go from -infinity to that number, and then union from the second number to +infinity. Or if it had the equals like this one, it'll go from -infinity to the first number, and then union from the second number to +infinity. So this or this will be how our interval notation will look when we're done. So we're testing points to find out whether the intervals are true or false. And y'all, the last thing I do, write the solution in interval notation.
This might be a silly question, but on the second part of that equation, is it supposed to both be brackets when you open it, or is it supposed to be open with a parentheses?
Oh, you talking about the second one I got right here?
Yes.
It uses parentheses around your infinities only, but if it has equals, it will use brackets around both of the actual numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess the reason we can't put brackets around infinity is because it just keeps going and going and going. So there's not like a definite stopping point on it. All right, so y'all, these aren't too bad. It's just getting these equations solved. Once we can get these equations solved, we can start testing our points and then finding out where our solutions will be. And I'll tell you what, when I test my points, I usually only use one number, and that's 0 to test. Because I know if 0's in the middle and it's true, I'm only going to shade the middles and not the ends. Or if I use 0 and it's in the middle and it's false, then I know I would only shade the two ends. Okay. So let's play with some of these and see what we do. And y'all, these will all say solve the following inequality. And I'll actually show you how you can look at these on the graph. Because remember, since we're setting them equal to 0, the x-axis is the 0 point on the y values. So you can sort of use it to verify what we're doing by hand. So y'all, the first one, they've already factored for us. The first one, I got an x minus 3 times a x plus 4, all less than 0. All right, so remember, that's less than 0. So when I'm done, I would be using curvy parentheses, okay? And I sort of ignore the less than while I'm solving it. So I'm just going to take both of these factors and set it equal to 0. Now, like I said, since this is already factored, take each of the two factors and set them equal to 0. So y'all, the first one, I'll solve that by what, adding 3 to both sides. The second one, I'll subtract 4 from both sides. So now my two solutions are 3 and -4. So I'm going to come in and set up a number line. So let's see, -4 will be on this side, and then +3 on that side. So what I do to test my points, I find numbers that I can plug into this original equation and see if it is true or not. When I put a number in and it's true, then that's the region I'm going to shade, okay? Now, there's a nice number that we can test. So the number I'm going to test will be 0. And I know 0 is in between -4 and 3 on my number line. So I'm going to test 0 by putting a 0 in for the x's. So that'll give me 0 minus 3 times 0 plus 4 has to be less than 0. All right, y'all, so let's see. 0 minus 3 gives me a -3 times 0 plus 4 is 4, less than 0. So I guess the question of the day, -3 times 4 is -12. Is that -12 less than 0, true or false?
True.
So it is definitely true. So what that means, y'all, since 0 was in between the -4 and 3, and that was true, I'm going to draw that number line again. So since that was true in between -4 and 3, I would shade that little section and then write my answer in interval notation. Now remember, when I had the middle section shaded, I had one of these two cases, from A to B in curvy parentheses or from A to B in brackets.
Curvy parentheses.
Curvy parentheses, there you go. And then I'll just put what, my -4 to my +3. Okay, so not too bad on those. So y'all remember this was less than. So I'm going to show you a graph of this, because what that means is when I graph this in between -4 and 3, my graph will be below the x-axis since it was less than. So let me just show you a graph on that. So let's see, I'm going to go to y equals. So I had parentheses, x minus 3. Close parentheses and open them up again, x plus 4. And close. Now I don't have to put the right side, the less than, and all that fun stuff. I'm just going to graph this for us. So let's go to graph. And y'all look on that graph. If you go left, that's -1, -2, -3. That's -4 on the left side where it goes below the x-axis. On the right side, you got 1, 2, +3. So if you notice, in between that -4 and 3, my graph is below the x-axis, which means that part is actually less than 0. Okay. So like I said, you can always sort of graph these to get an idea of what you got going on. All right, y'all, so let me flip over. So remember, the first one is already factored. Just set both the factors equal to 0. On the second one, we got an x squared minus 13x plus 40 is going to be greater than 0. So now if you was to graph this, and since it's greater than, you're looking for the part of the graph that would be above the x-axis, okay? All right, y'all, so remember, I'm gonna factor this and set it equal to 0. So I got an x and an x. All right, y'all, so we've done a lot of factoring. What signs would y'all put on this?
Negative.
All right, so I got my 2 negatives. And then find me factors of 40. That'll add to get me a 13.
8 and 5.
8 and 5. All right, good job. So that thing is factored. So now we'll just take our 2 factors and set them equal to 0 so that we can get this solved. You know, it looks like I'm going to be adding on both of these. So I'll add 8 to the first equation and get x equals 8. Add 5 on the second one and get x equals a positive 5. So we would set up our little timeline now. We got, let's see, 5 comes before 8. Now, y'all, I'm still going to test 0, but now I know that 0 is less than 5. So my 0 is going to be on this left side here. But here's the thing. If it's true here, then it'll be true on the other ending interval. If it's false here, then that means it'll be true in the middle, and that's it. Okay? So let me put a 0 into this top equation. I got 0 squared minus 13 times 0 plus 40 has to be greater than 0. Well, the reason I use zeros because that's the big 0. 13 times 0 is a 0. So I'm going to have 0 minus 0 plus 40 has to be greater than 0. All right, so adding everything up, I get 40 greater than 0. True or false?
True.
So what that means, since that was true, I got my 5 here and my 8 here. Since it was true in the first interval, I'm going to shade my first interval. And then I'm going to shade the outside interval on the right. So it's either shade, not shade, shade, or not shade, shade, and not shade. All righty. So remember, you got 2 intervals on this one. So this one's going to be the one that starts at negative infinity. It's going to go until I hit the 5. So would y'all use the parentheses or the brackets?
Parentheses.
All righty. And then union from the 8 to the positive infinity. Hey, y'all, so that's done. So now I'll tell you what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to mess with us on solving these equations the most. So let's see. They're going to step it up on this number 3 here. We got
Wait, on the last one, why would you use parentheses instead of the brackets?
because see my less than up here, it didn't have the equals under it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And that's the only thing that I use to determine whether I got the parentheses or the brackets.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, y'all, let's see. X squared plus 7x minus 22 is going to be greater than or equal to an x minus 6. All righty. So the main thing we need is a 0 on the right side. So we need a 0 over here. So that means both of these need to move to the other side. So we're going to subtract an x from both sides. We're going to add 6 to both sides. And then I'll use my equals at that point. So anything that's on the right side, you got to move over, okay? So let's see what we got. We got our x squared. 7 minus 1x will leave us 6x. Negative 22 plus 6 will give us a negative 16. And that's now going to be equal to our 0. All righty, so now we're ready to factor this. So we'll have our x and our x. All right, y'all, what signs would y'all put on that?
Positive
All right, keep going.
and negative.
All right, positive and negative. So can we find factors of 16 that'll subtract and give me a 6?
8 and 2. 8 and 2.
8 and 2. And remember, at this point, y'all, the larger factor has to have the same sign as the middle. So since middle's positive, your 8 will be positive, and your 2 will be negative. All right, so now let's get our solutions. So y'all, the first one, I'll subtract 8. Second one, I'll solve by adding 2 to both sides. All right, so when we set up this number line, let's see, negative 8 will be first. So negative 8 will be on the left side. Positive 2 on the right side. All right, and I'm going to test that 0 again. So I know 0 is in between those two numbers. And y'all, what's nice is I'm going to use this equation right here where we got everything on one side. Now remember, we use the equals when we solve it, but remember that equals is really a greater than or equal. So I'm going to put a 0 in for the x. That'll give me 0 squared plus 6 times 0 minus 16 has to be greater than or equal to 0. All right, y'all, so let's see if that's true. That's going to give me a 0 plus a 0 minus 16 greater than or equal to 0. So y'all, is this going to be true or false? Because it looks like I'm getting a negative 16 greater than or equal to my 0.
True.
Oh, hold on. What are y'all saying?
False.
False.
Because negative 16 is less than 0, not greater. So good job. So y'all, what that means. Now, if I was y'all, you could do everything on one. I'm just drawing another number line just so people can see what I'm doing when I get my solutions. But since 0 was in the middle and that was false, that means the outsides are the only places that are going to get shaded on this. Okay. All right, so does one of y'all want to try my interval notation based on this answer?
Negative infinity to -8, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be close bracket.
Okay, good bracket. Okay.
You're gonna union it.
Uh-huh.
Bracket 2
Mm-hmm.
infinity bracket.
We'll make them curves.
Curve, my bad.
Mm-hmm. So good job. That's it. So, and if you notice, your intervals will almost look like your number line when you got it done. Okay. All right, so good job on those. Let's see what number 4 has. Now, it's not bad. It's just a x squared greater than 9.
Can you give me just a second to write that down?
Okay, yeah, hang on just a second. All right, let me let one in real quick. All right, y'all. So this x squared greater than 9. I'm going to bring that down and set it equal to 9. So since I got an x squared equal to a 9, I'm just going to take square roots to solve this one. So remember, I'm going to do the square root of x squared equals the square root of 9. So that I get an x equal to, now remember, since I'm doing a square root, I got to take a positive and a negative. And then the square root of 9 gives me 3. So my two answers will be -3 and +3 on my number line. Okay, and once again, my 0 will be in the middle this time. Now, y'all, here's the thing. I use 0 every time because to me, that's easy. But y'all can use any number you want. Okay, you can test any of these intervals with any numbers that you want, okay? So if I put a 0 in for that x squared, I got 0 squared greater than 9, which will give me 0 greater than 9.
False.
So that is false. So that means we cannot shade the middle where that 3 is located. So we got to shade the outsides. All righty, y'all. So interval notation is going to be really similar to what we had up here.
Open bracket, negative infinity
Uh-huh.
to -3 bracket.
So
Oh,
everyone though, right?
Isn't it gonna be parentheses because
That
it's
makes
greater
sense.
than?
Uh-huh.
that
So
makes sense.
no.
My bad.
So no. So it's going to be the curvy ones. Good job.
Okay. And union
Uh-huh.
plus, I think it's 2. What is it? 3
Uh-huh.
to infinity.
There
And
you
I
go.
think it's open.
Mhm. So y'all just remember, since I didn't have the equals under that greater than this time, we're going to use curves on those, okay? Up here on the one I just did a while ago, it did have the equals under it, so that's why the numbers had the actual brackets around them. All right, y'all, so let me switch pages now. So let's see, this is number what, 5? Okay, so number 5 is sort of tricky. I got 25 minus x squared is going to be less than or equal to 0. All righty, so let's see. I'm gonna set it up equals. So y'all, once again, I got an x squared term and a number. So I'm gonna move the number to the other side by subtracting 25. That's gonna give me my negative x squared on the left side. Equal to 0, negative 25 gives me a negative 25. All right, y'all, next step, divide both of these by -1. So that cancels, giving me x squared is now a positive 25. So now finally we can take those square roots. So that x will give us a plus or minus 5. All right, so we will set up our number line with a -5 and a +5. All right, and 0 actually on this one will be right in the middle again. And y'all, I'm gonna go back to my original one and just plug a 0 in for that x squared. So I'm gonna have 25 minus 0 squared has to be less than or equal to 0. Well, let's see. 0 squared is 0. So that's just going to give us 25 less than or equal to 0.
False.
False.
So that is definitely false. So since it's false in the middle where 0 was, we're going to shade the outside edges. Alrighty, so we're going to start at negative infinity again. Till we hit our -5. So what's going around that -5?
A bracket.
A bracket.
Okay. And then union from the 5 to your positive infinity. All right, questions on that one? And really, if you notice, the trick is just what kind of equations are they going to throw at you, okay? And they like mixing stuff up a lot. Look at this number 6. I got 10x minus 25 minus the x squared is going to be less than 0. Y'all, what I'm going to do to this one first is I'm going to put it in order. I'm going to rearrange this so I can get that negative x squared first, plus my 10x minus my 25. And at this point, I'm just going to set it equal to 0. Now, what is nice on these, remember up here when I had a negative, I divided by negative. Technically, when you divide by negatives, we flipped our inequalities around now, but we're taking care of that by using the test points. So that's why we're not having to actually flip the inequalities, okay? All right, look on this one. Before I factor that, I want that to be positive. So y'all, what I would do is come in and divide everybody by -1. That's going to make my x squared positive. My 10x will be a negative 10x. My negative 25 divided by negative will make that a positive 25. All equal to my 0. All righty, so let's factor this. So we got an X and an X. What signs and numbers would y'all put on this?
Negative and negative, I believe.
Uh-huh.
5
And
and
then
5.
5. There you go. Oh, so y'all look at this. This is a repeating answer. So watch this. I'm just going to take the X minus 5. Set it equal to 0. So my number line is only going to have one number on it this time. And I'll show you what happens in that case. So basically, we would add 5 to solve this. And I get X equals a positive 5. So since I've only got one number here, I'm going to write the interval notation to exclude the number 5. So when you get a repeat, the only number you exclude will be that number that you got for your solutions. So remember, to exclude a number, I would start at negative infinity until I hit that number. And then that number we would union around and then head towards positive infinity. So what that means, if you was to look at a graph of this, it would be one of those that comes down and touches the x-axis. So since it don't have the equals, this one point gets excluded because everything else would be greater on that, okay? So one number, you only exclude one number. All right, y'all, looks like we got one more of these. So let me find where am I at. So we got number 7. In this one, I'll show you another way to write an answer. So let's solve this one. We got an x squared plus 8 less than 4x. So y'all remember, I need a 0 on the right side. So to get a 0 over there, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And then I'll use my equals instead of that. So if you subtract 4x, it's going to go in between the x squared and the number. So you'll get a x squared minus 4x plus 8 will all be equal to our 0. All right, so now we're going to try to factor that. We know we got an x and an x. What signs will these two numbers have?
Negative.
All right, y'all, so I need factors of 8 that'll add to get me a 4.
Four and 4.
Oh, but remember, gotta be factors of 8. So remember, 8 I can get 1 times 8, but 1 times 8 will add to get 9.
Is it 4 and 2?
So 4 and 2. Ooh, but 4 and 2 add to get a 6. So y'all, I think that's the only way to get an 8, right? There's 1 times 8 and 2 times 4, but neither one of them add to get a 4. So guess what? This one does not factor. So if it does not factor, you will write the answer as, looks like a 0 with a line through it. This right here stands for no solution. Okay, so MATLAB, when you're into MATLAB, it should have a, option down there where it has the infinity. You'll see this, a 0 with a line through it. That's what that means. It means that you had no solution. And the reason we got a no solution is because this thing did not factor, okay? That means if you was to do the quad to this one, it would probably get imaginary answers, okay? And on these, we're only worried about what we call real solutions, okay? I think some of y'all are getting knocked off and back on and then knocked off again. All right, y'all, let me ask y'all, does y'all have any questions on this?
I do. I got kicked off twice, so I didn't get why it said does not factor.
Because for this to factor, remember we had both negative, like the middle number. So we were looking for factors of 8. So if you take an 8, the only factors are 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. But remember, since this last one was positive, we needed factors of 8 that would add to get 4. Well, these factors 1 and 8 add to get 9. 2 and 4 added to get 6. So since neither factors would give me that middle number, it did not factor. So what happens, Destiny, when it does not factor, the answer will be, we call this no solution, but it's like a 0 with a bar through it.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. All righty, so our plans will be for this week, let's see, Wednesday. On Wednesday, we will do our test 3 review. And I'll probably move 9.3 to next week, so that when we come back next Monday, we'll do 9.3 and 9.4 that week. And then the next week, we'll do 9.5 and 9.6. So the last test does not have a whole lot of material on it. But it gets into doing something we call logarithms. So that might be a new one for y'all. So we won't have a long lesson tonight. I'll probably cut it short after this one. So let me stop my share here. All right, y'all. So I will say this, if you had any effects from that tornado and you need a laptop or you need a hotspot at home, contact the school because they got them resources now, okay? Library has plenty of laptops, and then they have, it's either a number or a link you can use to get hotspots at home for internet, okay? They got the food pantry and other kinds of services they will help y'all with. Also, I wanted to remind y'all that tomorrow is April 4th, which means y'all need to start picking your summer classes or your fall classes. Especially nurses, because the A&P will go quick, microbiology will go quick, and all that, okay? All right, also, does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, so when is the actual test 3? Because I didn't see it on the